Hey everyone, Matt Bove here, sitting in the Channel 7 office on Thursday, and I wanted to do a video because the Buffalo Sabres season starts tomorrow, and I think the Sabres are going to be a playoff team this year, which I know is crazy, but bear with me. I've thought about this a lot over the last couple weeks, really over the last couple months. As far as the offseason is concerned, I still think that they could have done more. I feel like this team was one win away from me being incredibly overly confident that they're going to be a playoff team, but I think that they can absolutely get there, and I think that has a lot to do with just some signs of progress that I believe we will see from some of their young players. Also, I think some of the conference will take minor steps back. I think when you look at the Sabres and you look at the outlook for this year, I just have right here, I know these are just very baseline. These are not advanced stats. These are just the numbers from last season. The Sabres' leading point getter last year was Alex Tuck with 59 points. That is ridiculously low given the scoring we saw from them 2 years ago. Going into last year, scoring regression was something that we talked about. And boy, was there scoring regression across the board. I think this year it'll get closer to what we saw 2 years ago, but higher than what we saw last year. And that's probably for almost everybody. Maybe the only player who might see a tad regression is JJ Paterka because he had 28 goals and that was really good. Besides that, though, I think you see more than 22 goals from Alex Tuck. I think you see more than 29 goals from Tage Thompson. I think you see way more goals than 18 goals from Dylan Cousins. I think Benson takes a step forward. I think you have Jack Quinn now, who is actually getting into the season. He had 9 goals and played in just 27 games last year. And then I also think you will get stronger contributions from what looks like their fourth line with Beck Malenstein, Sam Lafferty, and Nicholas Aube-Kubel. I think that those guys will combine for a nice line that applies pressure on other teams, makes the lives of their top three lines a little bit easier. I think Jason Zucker will be a nice little boost. I think Zucker will kind of fill the void of what production they got from Jeff Skinner. Maybe not as productive, but also not as much of a liability defensively. I think Nick McLeod will be similar to what we saw from Casey Middlestat. Different skill sets once again, but that's just kind of the way I'm anticipating the production goes. So I think we will see more scoring. I think this team will do a better job scoring. Lindy Ruff also historically as a first, as a coach in the first season of a year, I said that wrong. Lindy Ruff in the first season behind a bench, whenever he joins new teams, there seems to be success. I think Tage Thompson will thrive with a coach like Lindy Ruff. I think Dylan Cousins will take a big step forward. Also, just Dylan Cousins having an A, I feel like that puts him on a level of like he doesn't need to prove to anyone like what he is as a player. And last year was not a good year. There's no way that you can kind of dance around that. He needed to be better, and I think he will be this year. I think he was just thinking a little bit too much, honestly, last year. I think that sometimes happens in sports. He had such an exceptional year 2 years ago that last year there was a big step back. I think though he is probably more of a 25 goal player than 18 goal player like he was last year. They just really took a step backwards offensively last year. However, goaltending was much better last year, specifically with Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, than it was 2 years ago. So let's just look at the baseline numbers. I think the scoring will be better. I think the goaltending will probably be a little bit worse. My reasoning there is just because goaltending is very unpredictable, and there are very few goalies in the NHL who continue to sustain that level of success over a super big sample size. I still think Luukkonen can be a really good goalie. I still like the idea that they signed him. I think Devin Levi will play meaningful games for them and be a difference maker, better than anything they've had from a second goalie in years past. But Luukkonen goes from his numbers last year to a top 15 guy. I think they'll be okay. They just can't see those numbers completely plummet. So goaltending was really good last year. It kind of kept them in a lot of games. I think the goaltending will be a little less consistent this year, but offensively, they'll be much more dynamic than they were. Then we get to the defensive part of this. I was uninspired with the moves that they made defensively. I like Bowen Byram. I think that he could be a good player. I think him alongside Owen Power will get the most out of those two. I think Owen Power is going to continue to get better. I don't love that they didn't really bring in anybody new I get you get Samuelson back. I mean, Samuelson, how many games did Samuelson even play in last year? He played in 41, so he plays in half of the games last year. You would like to think that you're going to get more out of him. You're going to get a fuller season. Yoki Haru going with Dahlin in a contract year that probably lead to some success for Yoki Haru. And then the bottom pair guys, Clifton. I think Dennis Gilbert is a nice addition as like the seventh defenseman on this team, just because he can probably play some pretty tough minutes if they do have an injury. I don't think they're going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel quite like they were in the last couple of years with just their depth defensemen. So I like that aspect of it, but I still think they could have went it and got a legitimate pair for Dahlin, or tried to, or even put Byram with Dahlin and then found a legitimate partner for Owen Power. They don't, whatever. I think defensively they will be okay. And then the other big thing is the power play. Like I said so many times last year, the Sabres, but with a power play. It would be almost impossible for them to have a worse power play than they had last year. So that's another reason why I think the offensive numbers will increase. Another reason why I think the success will be more consistent with this team, because I do think the power play now under the watch of Seth Appert will be better. I think that will bail them out of times when they're having a hard time getting goals. I think if you can get one on the power play, it just helps you really across the board. There were very few times last year when they could count on the power play. So my reason to think that they make the playoffs is just because I think they're going to score more goals. I think the goaltending will be a little less consistent, but it'll still be good enough. And I think that Lindy is going to get more out of this team than maybe some people are giving them credit for. There are a ton of different projections and analytical websites and different people who project seasons. And as we sit here a day away from the start of the Sabres regular season, most people think that they're going to be between an 85 and a 90 point team. I think they're a little better than that. I think that they're probably closer to a 90 to 95 point team. And if that's what you are, you're at least fighting for a playoff spot at the end of the year. But I also think that the floor is higher. Like, I think that their floor is probably closer to high 80 points than it is to low 80 points or 85 points, like some people think, just because last year so much went wrong and they were still kind of in that range. I just don't see a world where Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins and Alex Tuck do not produce at the level that, or past the level that they did last year, especially with a new coaching staff. I like the fourth line. I think the power play will be better. I think Zach Benson could take a step this year. I just think it would be very unlikely that several of these guys take steps back after what we saw last year. And if last year was the floor with a new coaching staff, I think this team is closer to being a legit playoff team. And then you just look at the division. I think Florida is obviously very good. I think Toronto is obviously very good. I'm just anticipating the Bruins are good because they are next year, but that is a team that has a lot of questions. They'll still probably be really good, but maybe they won't. Maybe this is the year that Tampa takes a bit of a step back or a bigger step back. Ottawa is interesting, super talented. They get Linus Ullmark. You would think that they're kind of one of those teams. To me, it's kind of in clusters. I look at this division as, okay, you've got your top guys, which are Florida, which are Boston, which are Toronto. Then you've got the next group, which in my mind is Tampa, Detroit, Buffalo, Ottawa, and then unfortunately, sorry, Montreal Canadiens fans, but then I think Montreal is kind of sitting at the bottom there. So I think the Sabres are going to have to beat out those other teams. I like what Detroit did, sort of. I like Ottawa more than I like Detroit, but I just think there's always a team that maybe takes a step back. So I think, to me, that's why I'm banking on the Sabres being a step forward team. This will be the last thing I say. I know I've been rambling, but I just wanted to put a video out because we are so much closer to the season. At this time last year, a lot of people were really high on the Sabres. They're coming off a really impressive year 2 years ago where they just barely made the playoffs. For some reason, I just didn't get there. Like, I thought they could be good, but I didn't think they actually would be. And I don't know what it was. I feel more confident about this team, and I think that's just directly a result of Lindy Ruff. Maybe you could say I'm buying the Kool-Aid. Maybe I am. But I didn't think that Lindy Ruff was the slam dunk hire that other people did. I pushed back on the Lindy Ruff hire when they made it because I said it was low-hanging fruit. It was too easy for this team to just go out and make the Lindy Ruff hire. But just, I've only been in the building a couple times. So I don't want to sit here and paint this picture like, oh, I'm there all the time. I've got a handle on what the vibes are like. But it does feel like they understand that last year was not good enough and that Lindy Ruff is here to win now. And I think that he will get more out of these guys than Don Granato did. I think Don Granato was a good coach to get you from what they once were to a respectable team and really, really kind of refine some of the young talent that they had. But I don't think he was ever good enough to get you from what they were to, okay, now you're a playoff team and you can play meaningful hockey games. Or at least he didn't do that consistently enough. Lindy Ruff has a track record of being able to do that. He has had success in the NHL, and even though it is the nostalgic hire that the fans want, he has had success. And I don't think we're talking about Lindy Ruff as the Sabres coach if New Jersey just got decent goaltending last year. But he loses his job, and now he's here, and the Sabres better have decent goaltending between Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Devin Levi. So Lindy Ruff, with the young talent he has and decent goaltending, should, in my mind, lead to a competitive hockey team. And that's why I think that they will be a playoff team in 2024, 2025. If I'm wrong, well, then guess what? A lot of people will probably be wrong because I think a lot of people are sneaky high on the Sabres this year. We shall see. So thanks for watching, everyone. I'm sorry I'm rambling, kind of in Bills mode right now, but wanted to get some Sabres stuff out there for you. So we'll talk to you guys soon.